Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the present progressive tense. In Spanish that's el presente progresivo. First off, in English, most of the time we start off with the conjugation of the verb to be. So I am, he or she or it is, or they or we or you are. So we start off with that. And then we always have something called a present participle, which is the ing ending. So speaking, listening, breathing, and that's the present progressive tense. So in English, it's what is happening now. Before we get into how we do this in Spanish, we got to talk about some of the differences. So let's go back just to the regular present tense. If you've got the verb hablo, we've talked about this before. That can be a full sentence, and it will translate 5 different ways. The most basic is I speak, but it also can mean I do speak or I am speaking. And then if it's a question, it can mean do I speak, and it can mean am I speaking. So this am I speaking and I am speaking, in English, that's the present progressive. Now in Spanish, hablo, that's just what's really called the simple present. So that's what we've been talking about. So if we can already have something that's basically present progressive, then that can be a little bit confusing for us. So as far as just general conversation, if somebody's talking to you and they say, hey, what are you into these days? Well, I'm taking a class, a Spanish class, that would be present progressive for us in English, but I would go with just probably simple present in Spanish. Where you get into the present progressive in Spanish, it tends to have a little bit more of an urgency, a sense of urgency. So if I call you up and I say, hey, what are you doing right now? I'm probably not going to say ¿qué haces? I'm going to say ¿qué estás haciendo? I want to know what you're doing right now because I'm about to ask you for a big favor. So it's going to be present progressive tense. Or like if I'm trying to make this video right now, my kids keep walking in and bugging me, and I want to say, hey, I am teaching right now. So if it's a little bit more of a serious thing. So that kind of gives you an idea of the difference between regular present tense and present progressive tense. And honestly, if you decide to go and learn more Spanish and actually use Spanish, you'll get a better feeling of the difference. But that's a good starting point for seeing the difference. It's just this idea of urgency or just a feeling of being more serious. So then, keeping in mind that really we're just trying to figure out how to do this present progressive thing, let's talk about how we do this. So again, in English, we take the conjugation to be, which is am, is, and are, and then we take a verb with an ing ending. So we're familiar with verb conjugations. This thing right here, this ing, that is called a present participle. And that's just a fancy English grammar term that in English means it's a verb with ing on the end. So in Spanish, we actually do the exact same thing. We're going to take the verb to be. Now the problem is we have 2 verbs to be. We've got ser and estar. Now the one that we are going to use with the present progressive is going to be estar. So I'm going to write that down again so that it's actually legible. So we have estar, which is going to be the verb we use for present progressive, and then we will use our present participle. Now in Spanish, we actually have 2 different kinds of present participles. One for AR verbs and one for ER, ER or IR verbs. So it just depends on which kind it is. So let's say, for example, I want to say I am speaking. And you could continue that on. I'm speaking with my friend or something. But just to keep it simple, I am and speaking. So I am is going to be from estar. So you guys know these conjugations. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. You've got those in your notes already. Hopefully you've got those memorized really well by now. So you take that conjugation for I am, y'all know it would be estoy. And then speaking, this is where knowing your verbs comes in handy. So that's something we're going to be working on this quarter. So hablar is to speak. And what we do to make a present participle is the same thing that we do anytime we conjugate a verb. We take off the AR, and then to make a present participle, if it's an AR verb, the ending is going to be ando, hablando. And then if you want to change that sentence, instead of I am speaking, I want to say you are speaking. Then I just change estoy to estás. And then hablando meant speaking. I'm still saying you are speaking. So hablando is going to stay the same. So that's AR verbs. And then it's same story for ER and IR verbs. So if I wanted to ask you, are you eating? Are you eating right now? Then remember, you just say a sentence, put question marks around it. So I'm going to say, are you? So that's going to be estás. And then the verb to eat is comer. So we take off that ER, like we always do. And then for an ER verb or an IR verb, the ending is yendo. So we're going to add that there. Estás comiendo. And then if I want to say, yes, I am eating right now. Sí. Change estás to estoy. Leave comiendo how it is. And you're good. And then just for the sake of being thorough here, if we've got an IR verb, we are sharing. That might be something I say to my kids in a very serious tone. We are sharing right now. So we are, we know that's going to be estamos. And then to share, I don't believe we've seen. We may have, and I just don't remember. But to share is compartir, and then it's an IR verb, so it will be compartiendo. Now that's going to get you through maybe 90% of present participles, but I need to tell you the last little bit of the story. So here's the next thing. In Spanish, we have a problem with this little vowel sandwich. We don't like an I in the middle of two vowels. So this is a problem if I want to change leer from to read to reading. What I should do, drop my IR, add yendo, but then I just said we don't like that I vowel sandwich. So anytime that would happen, we're going to change that I to a Y. So it's going to be leyendo. So you guys try one out. The verb creer is to believe. So we should drop that ER, add yendo, but we have a problem with that. So change that I to a Y, creyendo. And I wish that was the last thing, but there is one last thing to talk about, and it's the worst thing about present participles. So first off, we have to think in the present tense. And this has to do with stem change verbs. So we learned before break there are three main kinds of stem change verbs. O to UE, E to I, and E to IE. An example of one would be dormir, and that's one that you do actually need to go ahead and learn. So in the present tense, we learned that it's an ODUE verb. So for these 4 conjugations, the 3 on the left, and then the ustedes conjugation, we change that ODUE. Nosotros and vosotros go back to the O, and then we know our IR endings, O, es, e, imos, is, en. And I'm going to remind you, it is also called a boot verb. Have you missed my artistry? I'm sure you have. So anyways, you've got these weird stem change verbs. So dormir is an ODUE, an E to I think we learned pedir. That may not be right, but all stem change verbs work the same. An E to IE, preferir would be a good example. So that said, that's present tense. With present participles, if it was an O to UE in the present tense, it's going to be O to U as a participle. If it is E to I or E to IE, it is going to be E to I as a participle. So here's what we mean by that. Dormir, it's ODUE in the present tense. If we just follow the rules of what I've told you, it should be dormiendo, but because it's a stem change verb, we're going to keep that U. So we're going to change that O to a U. So instead of dormiendo, it's durmiendo. Same thing with pedir. It's an E to I, so it's still an E to I as a participle. It should be pediendo, but it's not. Because it's a stem change verb, we are going to leave that as E to I. And then preferir. First off, remember it's always the second E after you take off the ending. And it's E to IE in present, but then it's just E to I as a participle. So it should be preferiendo, but because we like to keep everyone as confused as possible, we're going to leave it as an I, prefiriendo. So it's a stem change here. It's got to be a stem change here. So that really is all the information about present participles. So try out the stuff in Voces, the stuff that it says on Google Classroom for this. Keep in mind that I will be around to do video conferencing if you need to speak face-to-face or have any questions about that. And please remember that just because I haven't made a video for something doesn't mean that I can't make a video for something. So if you are confused, please send me emails, show up for the video conferences. Definitely communicate with me. So hope you're doing well, and I will see you guys again soon.